that Michigan State University occupies the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, Three Fires Confederacy of Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples. In particular, the university resides on land ceded in the 1819 Treaty of Saginaw. We recognize, support, and advocate for the sovereignty of Michigan's 12 federally recognized Indian nations, for historic indigenous communities in Michigan, for indigenous individuals and communities who live here now, and for those who were forcibly removed from their homelands. By offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm indigenous sovereignty and will work to hold Michigan State University more accountable to the needs of American Indian and indigenous peoples. Well, welcome to this evening of poetry with Nandi Comer. I am Laurie Hollinger, the acting director of the RCAH Center for Poetry. Before we get rolling, I have a little bit of gratitude to share. I would like to first thank our interim dean of the residential college in the arts and humanities, Glenn Chambers, for his support of tonight's program. I would also like to extend my gratitude to Madge Bice in the sound booth up there for her technical assistance tonight, and to Steve Byback, preparator of the Lookout Gallery, for preparing and opening the space for our events, and numerous lots more assistants. You get all my adjectives. For all the help, Steve, thanks. Thanks as well to our stellar staff of student interns, including Julia Spato, Maggie Stark, Dominic Stoops, and Joe Troxel, as well as our Wheelbarrow Books review interns, including Lillian Kaster, Elise Krawczyk, and Amaya Aten. Without our student staff, we'd be really scrambling even more than it appears I'm doing right now. A warm thanks and welcome as well to Scott Harris of Everybody Reads for being on hand this evening, offering Nandi Comer's books for sale. We hope you'll join us upstairs in the Lookout Gallery on the second floor for a reception and book signing immediately following this reading. We hope too that you'll join us in 2 weeks from tonight as we welcome MSU and ARCA alum Layla Chutty back home for a reading and workshop. You'll find information on that and our other events on the table up and back. Our honored guest tonight is Nandi Comer. Nandi Comer is the Poet Laureate of Michigan. She is the author of American Family, A Syndrome by Finishing Line Press, and Tapping Out by Tri-Quarterly Press, which was awarded the 2020 Society of Midland Authors Award and the 2020 Julie Suk Award. She is a Cave Canem Fellow, a Callaloo Fellow, and a 2019 Kresge Arts in Detroit Fellow. She directs the Allied Media Project's Seeds program and is co-director of Detroit Lit. Friends, I've read some books of poetry that are framed in some very interesting settings, but I never thought a collection that was framed by Lucha Libre, a Mexican free form of professional wrestling, would ever catch my attention. Nandi Comer's imagery of the sport, woven with memories of her childhood in Detroit and reflections on being a migrant in Mexico and elsewhere, is vivid, surprising, and refreshingly accessible. In her book, Tapping Out, she inhabits the wrestlers, their costumes, even their masks, with imagery that places the reader ringside in the midst of the raucous crowd, yelling for blood, as she leads us through these scenes and more. Appointed to the role of Michigan Poet Laureate this past April, she's the first in 70 years to serve in this position. As she noted in an interview with the Detroit Free Press, she follows in the footsteps of another Detroit poet, the great Robert Hayden, who was the first black person to serve as U.S. consultant in poetry, a position later known as U.S. Poet Laureate. I'm excited to see what's to come during her 2-year term, and I'm grateful our current state administration finally saw fit to make this appointment a reality. I'm even more grateful that this appointee is a poet who appreciates making poetry a part of Michiganders' everyday life as much as we do here at the Center for Poetry. Friends, please help me give a warm welcome to Nandi Comer.
Dear reader, this is a private conversation. Americana circa all the centuries, boy lynched at daylight, on a city canvas or southern back road, or blog, Dear Trayvon, look what you started. What you, torso reclined on pale boulder, head tucked under right elbow, left hand still in coat pocket. Dear reader, please, do not read any further. Dear Michael, I tried to ignore your face and peace sign and your mother crying next to Trayvon's mother, next to Sean's mother, next to Emmett's ghost. Dear woman in another city, pleading, I am ready to mourn you. Death designs my face. Dear reader, I am not talking to you. Dear cell phone, please stay in your pocket, your purse. Do not record. Do not post. If there is blood, the artist chose to omit it. Dear sheriff, dear sergeant, dear security guard, and the boy remains transfixed in his last breath. Dear principal, dear counselor, dear parent, dear man I am passing, my name is, dear internet, please do not post my slaughter. Dear every man or woman I know, stop, do not move, don't put your hands up, do not stop, remain, dear unnamed black man killed again and again and again. Dear, are you surprised? Dear reader, no. I want to start off by thanking the staff at the Center for Poetry. It's really, it means a lot to me to be here in such a wonderful institution. There aren't a lot of places that just want to do poetry, and so what better place to be than as a writer to be in the poetry world. Yes, there's a little light here. I'm going to grab a little water because right as you started to introduce me, I had a coughing spell, so. All right. I'm going to read 2 more poems from American Family, and then I'll read some poems from Tapping Out, and then I'll read some new work, and then we'll get some questions going. I want to make sure that I leave time to answer any questions that folks have after the reading. Anarcha appears again and again. Anarcha is, this is a name that was found in the journals of Dr. Sims, who was credited as discovering all of the current day procedures, a lot of the current day utensils used in contemporary gynecology. Unfortunately, his discoveries were made during slave periods where he treated a lot of slaves without consent because these slaves were sent to him as broken property. And he is credited as figuring out how to solve fistula, which essentially made women after childbirth, it's a condition that really is very difficult to recover from without certain kinds of procedures that he had discovered. And that's all I'll say. America appears again and again. Once I was a slave, and then I was an Alabama woman, a hushed experiment hidden between the damp thighs of a Tuskegee man. Too many times I was a newborn next to my mother in LA General County Hospital. Her slick syllables said something in Spanish, something in English, something about sterility, something about tubes. I am plump and soft and have not always had this hair. Always damaged, always ruined, sent away to be fixed and corrected. I am America's opaque shadow tossed like a dog rotting on every country roadside. I've been Gila cells passed around like Halloween candy. Are the doctors still waiting for their black offering, me, a silk dress of skin? Consider this. Each moment I am perched on an examination table is my break, my diseased heart, taken child. This is how I feel, wide, dark, lumpy, cotton at the bottom of a pillowcase. My cartilage has been trustworthy with its role, how it performs its design duty, how it keeps fastened my flesh to my bone. If I could be more than a specimen, more than a collection of daffodils, flora would mean I was not here. Don't you see? I am still here on all fours. I was never bone, nor beast, nor symbol for suffering. I'm a compass for warnings, a cured tissue. They are still dressing me for the cut, and I prepare for the familiar cold gauze, turn warm, then wet, then red. Ostrich woman. When I say I could not see her, ostrich legs, stock still and raw bone under her blanket, her gray tangled hair, her chapped lips, the gummy sleep smeared in the corners of her eyes, nor hear urine running out of her, nor the clatter of dusty shuttered blinds, nor millet worms twisting through the flour, no dented cans dribbling soup or cream corn on her kitchen floor, no misplaced diaper, no burnt cornmeal grains floating in black oil, how rotted stairs to my childhood bedroom sagged, how each door creaked and hung through their open and slam, the letters about aid and care, and rejection of pay, so much mail, so many envelopes, the piles of things in the dim living room in front of her stained love seat, the cheap extension cords running from the neighbor's fence, a soiled bathroom and buckets, a crippled wing, I mean a crippled wheelchair, I mean my mother, her voice, I mean her walking. So those were from American Family. It was a chapbook that came out prior to my first collection, but it is the second book that I wrote, so I always like to give a little bit of a nod towards that because my writing is a little bit more like that these days, and I'll get to some of the newer work. But there's a lot going on in American Family, and so I'll just leave that there. But this one is the one that Laurie was talking about, the Lucha Libre Mexican wrestling. I spent some time living in Mexico after I left undergrad. I was telling me, I told the other students about kind of a little bit about my suffering in undergrad and how I graduated with a degree and with a double major, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I majored in English and Spanish, and by the time I made it to the university, I was bilingual in Spanish, but I had a very unique way of acquiring language that I started when I was 5 years old in a bilingual school in Detroit. But I came out with that degree and everyone told me, oh great, now you can teach. And I was like, but like Spanish? And they were like, yeah. You just go right to schools and teach. And I was like, I don't think I want to teach Spanish. I really had a curiosity about language acquisition for folks that where the risk was more. And so I decided to teach in a bilingual school in Mexico because I felt like it would help give me some understanding and some theoretical practices. Then I got there, hung out with the poets, and I was like, I'm really more of a poet than anything. I mean, I did teach at that bilingual school, but for 3 years I was in the dirt with the poets as well. And when I got there, a friend of mine took me to a match, and I was hooked as soon as I got in there. I had seen it on TV, but it was nothing like what I had seen in the ring. And so I wrote the opening poem, because I couldn't quite explain to people why I love going to these matches. I'm becoming a fan. Don't blame masks. Blame smoke. Blame the tricky sorcery of shiny boots, capes, and props. Blame spandex's tight grip on wrestlers' thighs. When swollen biceps of masked men slap canvas, how like broken toys their bodies become, each one proffering his limbs to the other. And we, their spectators, hooked under pain's smelly spell, cannot resist wanting sweat and blood. We rouse like tiny rioters, wave our fists, curse the winner, blame the winning wrestler, how he radiates center stage, how he performs his own ascension up ropes, his thick arms hot and throbbing. Blame his left foot poised top turnbuckle, blame his hand on waist pose, or the braying crowd, or the thud his leg makes as he falls, hacking down on his opponent's waiting chest. Don't blame masks. Blame spicy pork rinds and their vendors. Blame bikini-clad women with corona and tecate splayed across their asses and tits. Can boys be blamed for imitating fathers, leaning in, praying his man clobbers the other guy? I blame a 4th grade shoving match with my sister. My forehead turned hot by an early June sun. I hadn't understood how anger, like a hot spring, boils at the belly's core until its hostile vapor clenched my fist. Never tried to weigh muscle against meat. Never had to throw a punch. I blame the thin hush an audience becomes as bone-tired men stumble into their musty dressing rooms, how their faces elude us each match, the wind-struck dirt under the feet of 10-year-old onlookers, they're cheering for my sister's grip. Blame the swirl marble buttons of our school uniforms, the impossibly long wait for recess. Blame the purple blooming bruise sketched by the brushstroke of her hands. I have not thrown a punch since. I wish I had bright, sparkling fabric hidden under my dress shirt. Blame the seams of a practice persona into which we all neatly wrapped our arms. Blame the seamstress who sewed this mask and cut all the loose threads. This arena is a site for unveiling, my locale for loosening the strings. So one of the things that people always come at me with, which I'm like, yo, don't come for me. But they're always like, yo, it's not real. Like, why are you so into this? It's clearly fake. And I think people don't understand that, like, there is a plan. There is an understanding of what is going to happen. And I always ask them, I said, well, you know, when you go to Cirque du Soleil, you say it's fake. Do you think it's not real what they're doing? It's a performance, and we all have come to see it play out. The difference is we get to like say things and yell and curse, and, you know, and we all act like we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, but you know. So a lot of the poems do kind of address that question about it being fake. But I also I want people to consider the what's at stake when people are actually in the arena doing doing this work. And so one of the things that is like a part of the matches that is at stake are the bedding. So oftentimes people think about the wrestlers that have a mask, but not everyone wrestles with a mask. Sometimes there are wrestlers that don't have a mask and they just wrestle with their total identity out there in the world. And so what you can do as a wrestler, you can put up your mask, you can put up your hair if you don't have a mask, and you will get shaved if you lose if you don't have a mask. And if you have a mask, well, then your identity will be revealed. So there's a lot at stake with these kind of fights. So I wrote a poem thinking about what happens, what's at stake. How not to lose the mask. Lucha de apuesta, which just means a match where you're betting something. Lucha de apuesta, which is for Pedro Aguayo Jr., who actually lost his life in a match. How not to lose a mask. Lucha de apuesta. The bet was mask for mask. This loser risked his hair. Now the winning fighter wields the winning razor in his right hand, a tuft of the sorry sap's locks in his left. I'll bet money for your car, his house for your dressing room. She who loses will work as a servant for the champion, drowning for electric shock. And when there is nothing on the line, everything is on the line. His elbow's last lace of cartilage will give. One too many hits might shatter her knee. Most lucky wrestlers will lose mobility in 2 places, while the unlucky, 3 broken vertebrae, his last breath slipping from his chest. If I don't take you down, you win my wife, or my first son, my blood, my ears, air. But you will lose memories, your grandmother's face, how to tie a knot, the digits of your address, how to win at risking. What do we win? A wandering walk in a new suburb, naming all familiar and foggy things. Ode to the tongue. Tongue is in this poem, in this book a lot. So someone who was a reader was like, you really like the word tongue. And I was like, I never thought of it like that. And so I decided, well, maybe I should send it some praise. Ode to the tongue. Click, twist, flutter, once again, you stick a tepid towel sound in my mouth. We are in a cafe, in a hotel, in a store, trying to order coffee or cookies, and there you go. The long U of you in my lap, I am a fractured figurine. Language is made of spackled sounds, flitting past my eyes. We play naming games, guess each mouth-shaped word made soft in our lips. What you call imitation is a clanging arrest, a sour misuse of the throat. I trip over syllables. I feel sweat trickle between my breasts. Let these faraway words lie like fuzz on my teeth. Tongue, have you noticed how troubled you've become? I cannot maneuver conversation without you slipping out of place. You twist around like a trapped bull. I've tried to force you out of your silent ending. We are native to people who cannot stop speaking foreign languages. There is no space for timidness, tongue. Loop into a long word like long. Lay the lengthy trills on the backside of paladar. At some tables, tongue and language are the same. Don't bother translating decorum. Each country sets with its own formal address and common clatter, a shock on the mouth. In this mouth, let's send a curled G galloping across some desert with the R's rolling ribbon heart. Detroit, Llorona, my heart, my city. Another rip night, another dank song. Another bloated head of headline child bobs in your river, loaded barrel woman, pumped piston city. 7 of your boys rushed a townhouse door for jewelry, for a cable box, for a game console, tossed over kitchen tables, turned another boy's face to mush, and you've gone and given up their ghosts. Singing a murderous sinfonetta, you make another girl, another son dance on the waves of your wails as if each bullet were a small celebration missile. I know this lost love luck is not your fault. You do not mean to change a father's body to canopy and shield. Into a dead weight your daughter will tuck herself under until your singing is done. But I watch you strain with moan and hem, your living room floor scattered with obituary flaking faces. I've seen your organ arms frantic wave, the length of your fingers curved around carnation stems. Each night your skin twists morn to morn. Beating chest woman, yours is a solitary grief whose wailing provokes the next hand hooked to an infant throat. Weeping woman, foolish mother, I've tried to sing your praise song, but each of your river-drowned children is a clanging chord in my throat. Don't stop. Don't stay, you warn. You refuse to protect me. Still, I drag myself to you, kneel and kiss your oily asphalt knees. No one knows our grieving songs, your love of graveyard strolls. If only to bundle the fringes of small caskets, I come back, I retreat, I come back, I retreat. So I want to read a poem that I had mentioned earlier in class. There's a lot of persona in this work, and one of the poets I studied almost like for a very long time. I really enjoy the work of Heidi. She was one that was masterful at persona, and I was looking at someone else's work and how they were accessing other writers' voices. And I thought, maybe I could write a poem in the vein of Ai, and it came out in this, The Warning. So many beautifully bloodied sounds tucked under my chin, breaking under pressurized note. I've made it through the night working lines into a damp thigh, a stalled truck, a woman humming into her husband's ear. Without occasion or motive, I've buried voices. I've studied the slow motion of carving breast meat. I shadow the butcher's cut. I feel my face's open grin. When I sharpen my shears, the baritone of a bruised man's chuckle rattles my lungs. A child star-like hand reaches across my belly. I have to yank them out. I had never heard wanting strapped to a boy's wrist until I tied him down, made him sing. I'm a borrower of voice boxes, a surgeon of tongues. I am warning you. You ought to stop loving me. You ought not lay your story on my counter. You ought to be careful before I take you up by your throat, before you find yourself barefoot in my kitchen, mute and panting. Guadalajara in the form of litany. Fire seared through La Primavera, and home kept calling. My country declared war, and home kept calling. The corn husk wilted, and home kept calling. The city was choking, and home kept calling. The sun bleached my rooftop laundry, and home kept calling. I sipped Fanta with Herradura, and home kept calling. My president bragged about foreign oil, and home kept calling. Quinceañeras filled downtown squares. I thought of home, I didn't call. Smoke dirtied the air, and home kept calling. Children donned surgical masks in school, and home kept calling. Propane vendors dragged through the streets, and home kept calling. The oven fireball through my kitchen, and home kept calling. The month I came home, Guadalajara kept calling. The soldiers found Saddam, and home kept calling. Mother said, I don't need you, go back. Home kept calling. Men sang serenades, and home kept calling. My asthma flared, and home kept calling. Las Chivas won Mexico, and home kept calling. My eyelashes were singed, and home kept calling. Mother's house was foreclosing, and home kept calling. I got lost in subtitles, and home kept calling. Pepperline jicama shimmered from street food carts. I called it home. I said just one more year. Detroit was black and blue from calling and calling. Mother's legs were pinned to the couch, and home kept calling. The doctor said surgery, and home kept calling. The doctor said degenerative and permanent damage. Mother's nerves were burning out, and home kept calling. I called home. Don't fret, Mother said. Home will always be calling. And the last poem from Tapping Out, Losing the Mask. It's another persona poem. It's in two parts. The luchador, which is the fighter, and la máscara, which is the mask. Losing the mask. 1, el luchador. When the laces loosened and gave, a cool air and calm hit my face. The ring's gas clogged my ears. Not silent, not chaos. It was as if I'd mangled my hand on the job. I lost my face, placed my creased grin into my audience's palms. Losing my mask was like having my torso ripped out. Then I offered it, still trembling, to the winner. My face, my exposed veins pumping over my forehead. I was no lazy factory worker losing my thumb under a negligent power saw. Not a chef cutting too quickly at a raw carrot. I lost. I put on a good face, my face. I dragged the rest of my body through the arena, through warm black halls, to my locker, pulled my arms into my shirt, and tugged at the buckle of my belt. I dressed my body in plain clothes. I broke. 2, la máscara. Before I let go, before they part me open, before they pull you head first out of me and hand me to a man who will take me and hang me, before I become a sparkling medallion, a memory, a relic of slaughter, you've got to loosen all the strings. You always have hair, boots, and tape. In a year, you can go to a mall, a grocery store. You can walk through the dust of a market, and everyone will know the bottom lip and callous forehead I have kept so long inside. Mijo, before I let go of your face, someone will have to rip me apart. So I think I have time for like 2 more poems, and they're gonna be new. It's funny because we were talking about form in our class, and I generally don't do form, but I really got into, I don't know if I got into the Abecedarian. I think this is how poetry works for me, is that I am writing something and I'm like, oh, maybe I should try this form for it. So I've been trying to write about my relationship to bras, and frankly, I hear some of the groans there, because there are a lot of people in here who have a relationship that isn't that nice. And so I decided, I've been writing these Abecedarian poems using the various sizing around the world for bras. It actually changes between European, American, various. So if you think you're one size, just go to another country. They tell you you're not. Syrian American sizing. It has a quote by Drake. 36L? How many letters are there? Angular elbows and knees. I was 12 when boys at church noticed them. Then I was a small cupped girl, itty bitty titty committee queen. I wished for D-cups, a bikini bod. Instead, I slipped into trainers while Dee Dee and Shayla and Candace arched their backs. Every girl curves into the weight of a body not ready to feel the slope and bust of a boy's wanting. I touched my nipples. I watched my mother hunch over, scoop heavy chest and stiff cones. Then it began, my slow march through each letter, double D, E, F, G, H, I, J. Each season I spilled over. I needed bigger sizes. I wanted to bounce on beaches in kite-shaped string bathing suits. Instead, my size meant cheap satin, lace, and beige breeches. No pinks, no patterns, no matching thongs for girls over G. The hard, narrow straps cut at my shoulders and rib cage, or wires and padding pinched into my body. No praise for a titty too big, for a halter top, or strapless. Quilted stretch of nipple, dark areola, fatty tissue reduced to sex. So much of my body is a harvest of cells, or simply a spectacle. Oh, to be alone, groping their thickness, their color, their weight. I praise myself, undoing each hook, set loose my exquisite chest. I'm going to end with this piece. It's another persona piece, but it's a project that's really dear to me that I completed a couple of years ago. I did a project called Technopoetics, which actually I went around and interviewed Detroiters from all over the city, producers, people in the music industry, any Detroiter that would allow me to record them. I just wanted to ask them like what their relationship to music is, and particularly their own music that we produce. Oftentimes, I would go out of town and people would say, "Oh, you're from Detroit, Motown." And I was like, yeah. Yes, that is a legacy that is influential on me in so much of the world. But it also negates the fact that we also created techno. And so I just want, a lot of Detroiters actually don't even know the actual history of techno in Detroit. And those interviews, they're just so rich with quotes. I decided to do kind of like a collage of voices in this collective voice in this poem. So everything here is very, very little editing, more like an arrangement of collective voices. Detroit tells its techno story. Let me be honest. Back in the day, I had to go to Chicago to see my music. We had to go to Europe to be validated. We were preps holding up our high school clubs. Back then, rec centers turned into after-hour gay bars. Dudes would roll their coffins anywhere they let them play. Social clubs, supermarkets. As long as we could drop tracks, we dropped them big black boxes and showed the world our speakers and turntables. And the people would break dance. That was before NWA. Techno was Detroit's response to Germany. We turned Tour de France into a breakbeat. We took Kraftwerk and mixed it with the breath of the machine. Canadians tried to come over here and take our style, but whatever sound they pushed out their studios just wasn't right. It had no funk. Detroit found a way to add a break in the breath. Then computers had all kind of regular kids that can make it be creative, and now we got all kind of DJ Little Finger wannabes dropping that booty like it's hot with no liner notes, no album art, no live venues, no radio personality pledging by your new hook, no way to know where you stole it from. You can hear us in French techno, dubstep, and Nicki Minaj, and K-pop and Afrobeat. Kanye say he even got his sound from us, and still folks stumbling around the hood talking about we got no legacy. I couldn't see myself until someone from outside told me how I looked. Until they put my picture in the paper, my mother thought I was selling drugs. I was always gone. I came home with new clothes. My friends thought I was a nobody, but they heard my shit on the radio. They just didn't know who it was. I ain't got no computer class. I worked 3 jobs and still stole clothes from Eastland Mall, so I flew. I got on a plane to nobody and off in Japan, and I'm a somebody, a superstar. Came home and my boy still said, fuck that nigga. I got a gold record and a beat up Toyota that damn near wouldn't start. It's hard to meet people in Detroit thinking on another level. No matter how much foreign dirt I kick, I still got home in it for me. This music passion is one of the few things that make me. Nothing else worked. Nothing else put me on the other side of the planet. Not the army, not some woman, not some rich man. Me, my music, my machines. Thank you so much. So we have about 10 minutes for questions, if folks. Sure, do you mind saying it really loud so we can all hear you?
I have a microphone.
Oh, you have a microphone, thank you.
Hi.
Is it on?
Should be. Yeah, check that. Here you go. It needs to be turned up a bit, but it's on now.
Okay. Okay, I'll just be loud. I was just gonna ask the line, borrowed, that included borrowed voice boxes. What was your inspiration behind that?
Particularly that line?
Yeah, or like the whole poem too, but specifically that line stood out to me a lot.
So that one is an original image. The image, some of the images prior to that they're actually referential to actual poems that I wrote. So the humming in her husband's ear is a direct, it's not a quote, it's a direct description of an image that is in one of her poems that a woman is talking about, you know, watching her husband trying to fix the truck and how she's actually getting really horny for him, but like that's something else. But for me, that's kind of how I feel when I get to interact with persona. I feel like I am borrowing somebody else's voice. But there's something more visceral about the work of Ahi. She is not only one that works with persona, she's working through it also to understand a lot of violent acts. And so some of her work not only takes on invented and historical figures who have committed some very like inhumane acts, and she's trying to get at that. And I think we both share that. Why I felt so inspired by her work is that oftentimes I'm not a violent person. If anything, as soon as somebody starts arguing with me, I'll talk to you later. I don't want to talk to you. You're too loud. But that act of like doing something that encroaches on somebody's like human right to exist, it baffles me. And so at times I'm trying to understand, what is that act? Why does that happen? What causes us, what drives us to that? And so that's the way that I engage in it sometimes, is that I adapt personas within the context of events that I've seen happen.
Oh, thank you.
There's a question. I don't think the microphone is working still.
That's right, I can just
Dead,
take it out.
and I can't get it open to change the batteries. I'm so sorry.
All right,
is
we
it
just
not
don't
loud
talk
enough?
loud. I mean, I can even get off the mic if you. Like,
No worries, I can just yell. Can you hear me?
yeah.
All right. Are there any? Which of your poetry collections would you? I don't want to say most proud of, but would you? Do you want people to read the most?
That's like asking which one of my children I want to listen to my life. All of them. No, I don't even have kids, but I am proud of both of them for very different reasons. American Family was published in 2018 prior to the pandemic, and I think people don't actually know that, because a lot of the material we're still grappling with globally, and thinking about how racialized violence, how white supremacy is working on our bodies and our mental state. And I think that until we actually address the mental illness that has been caused as a result of these violent acts, or witnessing these violent acts and the way that we consume them, that we're really not, I could keep rewriting poems to American family for generations. It's not something that started with Trayvon, and it's not something that ended with George Floyd, so it's unfortunate, but I think that it also, aside from that, there are poems in there that I've told resonate with people in my community because they have felt like things that they've experienced in their own lives were never acknowledged. And so like for instance, I have a poem called Why I Don't Call on Cops, and just that title, a lot of people are like, you're right, we're not gonna call the cops, like why would we call the cops, you know? It goes into a lot of other things, but tapping out, I'm pretty proud of it because I did a lot with it. Like it took me a while to write it though too, and I think it's also a testament. It was definitely a learning experience because I had set out when I first started writing some of the poems of Tapping Out. I had set out to write a travel poetry book. I wanted to write about what it meant to be Black in places where there aren't a lot of people of African descent. And some of those poems survived the editing, the cutting floor of the collection. But I had to go through a lot of experiences to feel comfortable. I also, there's some considerations about language that are very subtle, but like I don't italicize most of the Spanish in the book because I specifically wanted to write a book that people who are bilingual would feel fluid with, like somebody like me who doesn't really think in one language. There are italicized words in the book, but there's a particular reason why they're italicized. It's usually dialogue, or when we're talking about language acquisition, so when you're reading the definitions or translations of words. And then there's also this incredible collaboration that I was able to have with the cover artist, who is the same artist as the drawings in the book. So each section, because I'm so proud of it, I can show you. Each section has additional drawings by Miguel Valverde, who is he's a superstar who uses lucha libre as one of his major subjects to paint about. And so I also collaborated with the cover artist on American Family, but this was a Detroit artist. So it's really hard to say which one. Yeah. Sure.
Thank you for being here. This has been such a pleasure. I have a question. It seems like in some of your poems there's sort of themes of place and home and location, and I'm curious how where you are influences what you write, and are poems about a certain place things that emerge while you're there, or sort of more when you're reflecting on place?
So poems take a long time for me. A lot of the poems in Tapping Out were written after I left from living there, because I had to be able to think about it from afar and think about some of the incidents from afar. The ideas though stayed with me. So for example, seeing someone in blackface in a carnival, which happened to me in Mexico and in Spain, one of the things that I am not one of those that oh, this only happened in Mexico, so I only can write about the Mexico. I will merge things. I am okay with the creativity around poems. They don't have to be completely autobiographical. And so there's that. But also the idea of the poem was there. But I had to go to this workshop. I had to go talk to Brenda Cárdenas and talk about Lucha Libre. I had to come home I had to go to Germany. I had to do all these things in order for me to be the Nandi that could create this collection. That said, I'm always gonna be a Detroit girl. So like, I'm in Indiana writing about Detroit. I'm in Detroit writing about Detroit. I'm in Guadalajara writing about Detroit. So and sometimes I can't, like for instance, I didn't know how much of a river person I was till I went somewhere that said that they had a river and it was like a stream. And I was like, Detroit, y'all got nothing on Detroit River. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize how much of the river is in my work. And I was able to like, now that I had that experience, I can now like really go into that and really explore like my relationships to rivers. Does that help to
Yeah, that's wonderful, thank you.
Sure.
When you think about your growth, your life as a poet and writer, what are some of the most helpful or formative influences on that? And what has really helped you or helped you see the path forward?
So I hate to, you know how when somebody wins an award, they're like, all praise is due to God, you know? That's not me. All praise go to Detroit. Because one of the things about Detroit, and we don't have a poetry center in Detroit. It's a privilege to have an institution like this where you are, and I'd say take advantage of it. But one of the qualities of Detroit, because we literally suffer a brain drain. Many of our writers are incredible writers, but then they get to a point where professionally they can't excel if they decide to stay in the city. There just really are very limited opportunities for writers in Detroit. What that means is that you only see writers reaching a certain level of their career, and you don't have a lot of mentorship. And so one of the things that is very formidable in my life was that I had a writer who, before she left, I don't think she knew that she was leaving at the time, she really wanted to stay in Detroit. She decided to mentor a group of poets by inviting us to her house once a month and doing an intensive writing workshop and professionalization workshop. And she had seen some of us on like the slam community and the performance poetry community, the cafe community, and she could see from our own presentations of our work that what we were doing didn't quite fit in the slam world. And so she decided to teach us, like, this is what the lyric is, this is what you're trying to do. No one had ever taught me the lyric. No one had taught me about an MFA. I'd gone all the way through University of Michigan undergrad. University of Michigan has one of the best MFAs in the country, and no one told me the whole 4.5 years that I was there, because no one believed that I was actually trying to be serious about poetry. And so, but I don't regret that. I say that, and maybe my alma mater will hear it and change, but yeah, I didn't have anyone until she decided to, like, in a very, you know, just a giving way, just share with us what she had learned over the past 30 years, something that we weren't going to get from anybody if they didn't do it. Like, there wasn't anyone saying this is what a literary journal is. Like, we didn't have those conversations. And what's crazy is those people were Jamal May, Tommy Blount. Francine Harris was not mentored by Vivi Francis, but she later joined us in a monthly workshop. And then Erica Foreman, who also got thrown out of the group, but still had some influence. Dee Matthews. So we're talking about, those are all people that if you're studying poetry, you should know, because they are all nationally recognized poets. Tommy, Jamal, and I are the only people in the area of Detroit right now because of the brain drain. So, and I'm trying to stay, you know, but it is very difficult. And I'm trying to continue that legacy of imparting information to writers that are coming up. Now, the other thing that we did is that we taught in the schools. So now you have Ajane Dawson and Brittany Rogers, who are two nationally recognized writers who host the Poetry Foundation's podcast verses now. Like, these are writers who are making a lot of waves. So there's I think you guys said William Langford was also one of our students too. So that we not only were like, oh, let's soak up this information, but we also were like, no, this can't continue. And the only way that we are able to do it in Detroit is by direct mentorship. I also didn't go to my MFA until I was 30. That really helped a lot. Like, I'm glad no one told me about an MFA when I was at UMM. I don't think I would have even understood what to do. That was before I went to Mexico, if I had done that. So. There's a question over here. Yeah.
Do you remember your first poem?
I don't remember my first poem, but I do know my relationship to those poems. My first poems were, you know, my teacher, Terry Blackhawk, she was my high school English teacher, and she asked us to write poems, and I was kind of a snarky kid. Like, I just was like, I was an overachiever. I kind of like knew what would give me a good grade. So I would like write something super metaphorical. That's why I remember them, because they were bad. And so I would write something that I didn't even know what it was. I didn't even know what it was saying. And I would give it to Terry, and she's like, "This is so beautiful." And I'd be like, "Great." And I just was like, I really didn't have any understanding of. I read poems a lot in the way in which a lot of us read poetry in high school. Our teacher tells us we're supposed to read it, and then our teacher says, "What does this mean?" And then we all look around at each other, and then the teacher just tells you what it means, and you're like, okay. And then they go, write a poem, and you're like, is this right? And then she said it was, and so I said, okay. But then Vivi Francis came, and she was teaching a summer program, and I tried to pull that with her, and she was like, what does this mean? Huh? You wrote it? What does this mean? And I was like, oh, it's the poem. And she was like, no, I need you to write something that really is what you want to say. What is that you want to say? And it was the first time that poem, it was imitative of Langston Hughes's Everybody Wanna Sing My Blues. It used that refrain in my poem, and I talked about like basically growing up in the hood and how a lot of people were claiming black culture but not wanting to live black culture. And I used Langston Hughes's refrain repeatedly in the poem. And when I came back in the fall to Terry Blackhawk's class, I shared some of the poems that I had started writing with Vivi. And it was, she could tell immediately, this is very different. And she really encouraged me to keep like writing towards that space that felt like it was me fully coming out on the page. Thanks for that question. Well, listen up. We're 5 minutes over. There's a whole reception upstairs that I'll be hanging out in. Please, come talk to me if you didn't want to ask a question in front of everyone, or if you've still got some things in your mind. Just come and talk to me. I'll probably be the one eating vegetables or something, all right? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks again for coming out. Come out upstairs, have a snack, have a little talk, have a book sign, have a flyer sign. But come upstairs and join us. Thank you again. Safe travels home.
Woo.